Hello, everybody. This is Debbie, from Teacher Success Coach, with another episode of the Female Educators Roundtable. And on Saturday, we talk to educators regarding before the pandemic, during the pandemic, and after the pandemic, looking at their mental well-being and how much people have actually take the seriousness of that on board. The fact that we still have some students who are not connecting mentally because they're still stressed, and a lot of them have lost a lot of time in terms of the connection, and people have not even realized or noticed the impact this is having on them, both in the classroom and out of the classroom. And the impact is also having on teachers, which people just totally ignore and feel it's business as usual. We are robots, and they're not even interested in what's going on. So, on this episode, we're now talking about the female educators, what's happening with them, etc. So, I welcome a new one of our female educators from across the world. Hello, 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 Brian. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are
Thank you.
you?
I'm great. So thank you for accepting the offer to come online to share your journey of before, during, and after the pandemic regarding the students and your mental health and well-being. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Tell us where you come from. Tell us the school you taught in, how long you've been teaching, etc.
Okay. My name is Brianna. I have been a teacher for 16 years. I teach in the state of Kansas at a medium-sized school. There's about 1,000 students, um, and I teach English language arts, reading intervention, and dual credit currently. I've taught 8th through 12th at this point, as well as the dual credit college classes.
Okay, okay, okay. Thank you for that. Right. So, what was it like for you before the pandemic, being a teacher
Um,
then?
before Before the pandemic, I taught in a smaller district than where I teach right now. I actually moved districts during the pandemic. Um, and it was good. I worked at a very prominent school in our state, and the kids did very well on ACT. They were high level learners, really pushed themselves. I taught advanced placement at the time. And the only problem that I ever really saw is they just had a lot of anxiety about their grades.
Mm-hmm.
Just a lot of anxiety about their grades. Um, but at that point, we were trying to move towards technology. Obviously, technology was the big push.
Mm-hmm.
We had gone one to one, every student had their own Chromebook. But I wasn't quite there yet. I mean, some things were online, but not everything was online.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it just didn't seem important to put everything online yet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Okay, okay. Thanks for that. Why do you think the students were having anxiety though about the grades?
I think that it's a lot of different factors. The school was more of like a college preparatory type of school. And so these kids were headed to college. Some of them were already in college while they were in high school. They were trying to be national merit scholars. They were trying to make sure that they were 4 point and above GPA. They were looking for those scholarship opportunities. They were looking to
Okay.
be the top in their class. It was very, very competitive. And I would see a lot of anxiety about, when's that grade going to be entered in? When's that grade going to be entered in? My parents want to know when that's going to be entered in. I need to know when that's going to be entered in. And for me, maybe it's because when I was growing up, we didn't have a digital grade book.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you didn't worry about when something was going to be put in. Like, your
Mm-hmm.
grade was going to be your grade at the
Mm-hmm.
quarter.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a bit overwhelming
Mm-hmm.
to constantly be asked, when are you entering that? When are you entering that? And it's like, it's been 4 hours.
Mm.
Like,
Exactly. So as a teacher, the stress level would have been real high.
yes.
Wow.
I mean, it was I always think that grading is potentially either the best or the most stressful part of teaching. Like sometimes it can be very relaxing. Like
Mhm,
when you have like your system down and you know what you're doing and you're going, like it's really super calming.
mhm,
But sometimes when you feel rushed and you feel a lot of pressure coming in on you, like it feels like you can't get it
mhm,
into a groove. You can't make it happen.
mhm, mhm. Yep, I could identify with that. Thank you for that. So during COVID, what's happening? Oh, you say you moved during COVID, so you were not in that school anymore.
I when we went completely online, I was still in that district.
Oh,
We had a week to prep all of our stuff according to the state, and our kids were never allowed to go back into school, so they didn't have their textbooks. They didn't
oh,
have any of the stuff, and so it was kind of just free will. You know, I
mhm,
was taking pictures of stories and then like putting them on there so that they were PDFs. I was reading the stories out loud in videos. I was recording lectures. I was putting note sheets onto our Google Classroom platform. Um, but I had never gone completely online before. And so it was a huge learning curve for me to try and figure out, what's the best way that I can do this. I don't want to break any laws by moving this worksheet to the online part and like they think I violated copyright, but now we're fully remote. And so I don't know what the rule is. And there was just a lot of different moving pieces while you were trying to do that. I tried to Zoom with them once a week to make sure, like, just to check in, no lecture, no nothing, just check in,
mhm,
how are we doing? The neighborhood I lived in, I had a couple of students that lived in my neighborhood. And so, like, we would go for walks and, like, we would wave to
okay.
our neighbors. And, so I got to see a couple of the kids while we were still remote. We just social distanced, obviously.
Mhm,
Um, but honestly, the hardest part at that point was actually my son's schooling.
mhm.
He was in kindergarten at the time, and I've never grown so many plants. We had to grow grass, we had to grow corn, we had to grow a bean. Like, I mean, hands down to elementary school teachers because, like, they delivered a tub of all the things that you were going to need. And like she called me and she's like, I left it on the end of your driveway. Here's everything you're going to need for the rest of this year. I mean, and it was a Rubbermaid tub of the seeds, of the baggies, of the paper, of the pencils, the crayons, the markers, like
Wow.
all the things. And I mean, that had to take so much work to put all of that stuff together. Thankfully for me, mine is literature. I don't
Yeah,
need seeds. I don't need all those different pieces for my
yeah,
kids to
yeah.
be successful.
Wow. Wow. So how did your son feel about having to do those pieces? Did he feel it, was it fun for him?
Oh, he struggled. He They had daily class for 45 minutes in the morning. And so I would put him in front of the computer, and he'd never really been put in front of a computer. And so, like, he wouldn't stay in camera view. He'd like lay down, or, he'd be touching the screen and like pointing at his friends, or, it just wasn't something that he'd done because I had always been so strict about screen time. And all of a sudden, I was putting him
Yeah,
on a
yeah,
screen,
yeah, yeah,
like on purpose.
yeah,
And he just
exactly.
did not know what to do.
Yeah, exactly, exactly, exactly. He's thinking, what is this? That's why he's pointing this friend. He's thinking, what's this? What are they doing there?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. So, okay, so that was during. So how did you teach your students during COVID? Were you said that you guys were fully online or
We were fully online for the spring that COVID happened. And then the next year I moved to a different district and we moved to a every other day schedule. so that we
Okay.
would have fewer kids each day. So
Okay.
like you might have a class of 30, but you would have 15 kids in room and 15 kids online, and then they would
Okay.
switch places. And so they came
Okay.
to school every other day. And so the way that I tried to set it up was we would do lecture when they were in room with me, and then they would do like the worksheets and the reading when they were out of room. Like they would just check in with me online, and then I'd say, okay, here's today's assignment, get them going. And then I would go and work with my other group of students that were actually in building.
Okay. So they were getting education every day. They were getting you every day, but it was online was for 10 minutes. Okay, this is what you guys doing. Is everybody okay? All right. It must have been real hard for you because you are doing both of them.
Oh, yes. I mean, and you know, if you don't have like a bell ringer activity or something that those kids in the room need to do, like you can't have this side conversation with these kids online.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, there's just no way to make it work because this group will be too loud and this group can't hear you. And you're just
Mm.
constantly going back and forth. Um, and so, I mean, it kind of was boring to teach the same thing like 2 days in a row. Like, you know,
Yeah.
you give the lecture and then you give the lecture and like,
Yeah.
so you do it twice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just, but I mean, it worked. I understand why they did it. I was really glad when they stopped doing it
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it felt like I was doing two jobs at one time,
Yes.
like at all times.
Yeah. 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 It's thank you for that. It's interesting though because when I had students at home and I was teaching, I actually did the same, I taught in the classroom while I actually connect with them at home at the same time. So
Mhm.
for me that was kind of easy, but one of the challenges, I kept forgetting that they were on screen and I keep on giving my back to them. So it's like the student constantly have to remind, Miss, the students are at home. I say, oh, yes, 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 yes. That's one of the challenges because you forget you're so in the zone of the classroom that you
Oh, yeah.
forget that there's some students online that you have to be moving around so they could actually see what's going on in the board. So that
Oh,
was
yeah.
one of the challenge for me. How did you find it in terms of your students' behavior and their mental health when they were, A, during the COVID time, and B, when they actually came back?
When they were in the COVID time, like when we moved to every other day that fall, I had very few like in class behavior issues.
Okay.
I think that they were just so weirded out by everything that was happening
Mhm.
that they really withdrew.
Mhm.
Um, and it felt like I was really trying to pull them out of their shell most of that time that we were there every other day. And I don't know whether that was just they didn't see me every day. And so we didn't have like a consistent classroom community. Um, it was just a very weird situation that was going on at the time. Um, Post COVID, I have really tight knit classes. We are groups, every class has a different personality, and you know how that works. Every class gets a different version of you based on what their personality is.
Mhm.
One
Mhm.
class, they might love my mom joke every single day. And another class is like, oh my God, will you please never say that again? I mean, they are all different, and I appreciate them so much. Behavior wise, yeah, there was a spike in behaviors post COVID. I think that once they had to start coming back every day, um, they were used to having every other day. They were used to an entire year of that. And,
Mhm.
they didn't have to have their screens on. They could be doing something else while they were like, they didn't have to be accountable to me on
Mhm.
those days that they were off. Just as long as it said they were logged in, I was supposed to count them as present.
Mhm.
And I think once they moved into having to be there every single day again, and for me, these kids had been in middle school
Mhm.
when this all started, and now they're in high school and they've never experienced high school as a normal high schooler.
All right.
And so, they don't know how they're supposed to do pep rallies. They don't know how they're supposed to do these things that high schoolers know how to do.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
because 2 years, two groups
yeah,
hadn't done it yet. They didn't know what was going on.
yeah.
And so I think that part of them felt left behind. Like, I don't know what's going on. You know, why are these upperclassmen doing this? I was never taught this.
Yeah,
What's happening?
yes, yes,
And I
yes.
think that that was frustrating for them. I mean, to go from, okay, I am in middle school, now I'm online, now I'm every other day in high school, now I'm on block schedule, now I'm on regular hourly schedule. And it just changed every single year as we were trying to adjust to the level of the pandemic.
Right, right. So how did you cope in terms of moving forward with the students?
So I used to be Spirit Club sponsor. I'm not anymore, but I used to be a Spirit Club sponsor. And so like for me, school spirit is like a huge, huge part of your school experience. And so like we would get to like Spirit Week and I'd be like, okay, Spirit Week, you participate in at least 2 days and you write me a haiku about Spirit Week and I'll give you extra credit. You know,
Right.
I would show them like, hey, you don't know the alma mater? It's on that wall in the gym. Just follow along. Like that's where you need to look. Oh, what does Cody stand for? It stands for class of the year. You get points for going to events. You get points for, participating in Spirit Week. You get points for being at pep assemblies, and just trying to teach them these little pieces
Mm-hmm.
that they weren't used to anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, and we've moved away. I don't know if it was the same in the UK, but there was a lot of like show the students grace.
Yeah, yeah,
Like show the students grace. I mean,
yeah,
and like so deadlines were extended
yeah,
and they just kind of floated through.
yeah.
And that's kind of faded away in
Mm,
this last year for me. I haven't heard anyone telling me that. Like, it's a lot more like we're moving back towards that regular, like, this is the deadline. If you can't meet the deadline, you need to have a discussion with me. You need to
mhm,
advocate for yourself. You need to actually talk to me. You can't just float through anymore. Like, you've got to be responsible for what you're
mhm.
doing. And I think that that's an added stress for them too, because they haven't had that for the last 4 years.
Yeah, yeah,
And all of a sudden, the expectation is a lot harder
yeah,
and firmer than it
yeah,
used to be.
yeah, yeah. That, thank you. That is so very, very true. That it's a situation where they become so robot that they no longer know how to think. They didn't know how to think before anyway, but now it's less. And everything they're memorizing information now. It's like they're memorizing and just spit it out for you instead of thinking things through. Because I suppose they now come back into a structure and they don't know how to regulate the structure. So as a result of that, they're just saying, okay, I need to do X, Y, Z, and I'm going to be programming my mind to memorize it to give you X, Y, Z.
Mhm.
That's what I found out in terms of coming back. And in terms of, when you talk about the behavior, it is so true because we now have this expectation. We expect them to be doing certain things, but we need to remember that they were not taught to do it because they were not around at the time. So, how could
Mhm.
you expect them to write this essay when they only had that online and they were not even practicing it anyway? So, therefore, they cannot write an essay for you by you giving them the structure because they don't know what you're talking about. You know.
And that actually, something that I did this year, is I really, really, really started scaffolding all my essays to the point where, day one, we're just talking about topic and we're talking about the thesis. Like, and we're like collectively coming up with a thesis, and then the next day we're only working on one paragraph. We're only working on the introduction and I make them handwrite it. Like, and every paragraph is a separate worksheet. Like,
Right.
you hand me your introduction, I hand you your worksheet for the body paragraph that's next. You
Right.
hand me that body paragraph, and then I will hand you the next one. And it comes with a graphic organizer, and they scaffold out what their details are that they need and what they have the expectation. I've got up on the board some ideas for them, but they can also go away from that. But I've really, really, really started scaffolding those essays because I've realized they weren't given that.
Hmm. Hmm. That is so true. Because when I reflect on the essay, because even last week I was saying to some student, I say, your essay, I'm feeling quite challenged because your essays, there's some challenges with your essay. And I had to think, I'm thinking, yes, these were the pandemic children, so they don't even know what I'm talking about because they were not taught to write the essay. And now I'm having expectation, and they're looking at me as if I'm speaking a foreign language
Oh,
because,
yeah.
you know, that's the situation, you know.
Well, I mean, so here, like my son didn't start writing like multi-paragraph essays until he was in fifth grade.
Right.
And so when I look at it, I'm like, the freshmen that I had this year missed a quarter of their year in fifth grade when they should have been starting to learn how to do a multi paragraph essay. And then they were in a weird position of every other day. And like they just never got that foundation to get it together.
Mm. You see, and then we have this expectation for them when they have not even got the foundation. It's
Mm-hmm.
interesting though, because even when you think about their mental health, and the situation where mental health and anxiety is on the increase, you could see why it's on the increase. And then you have students who not attending school is on the increase. Of course you would, because it's a situation where they're not attending school because they have not had that training of socialization skills. So they
Mm-hmm.
don't know how to socialize, and it then leads to anxiety because they feel they're not making friends.
Oh, yeah.
So how have you seen that, and what does it look like in your students?
Um, I have a lot of students that will admit, I mean, they will say to me directly, I have social anxiety. Right. I mean, and they will say it to me, and, I appreciate it because it gives me a heads up, this is not the one that needs to be presenting. When I put them in groups, I need to kind of be careful what I'm doing, match them with a good personality, you know, and that's something that they didn't used to do. Like, I didn't used to have students that would just tell me, you know, I am struggling. Like, they would just push themselves and push themselves and push themselves and push themselves. And now they're much more willing to talk to me, at least, about this is where I'm struggling. You know, I'm having a bad day. I got in an argument with my mom about my grades, or my best friend and I, we're not talking to each other, and I don't have any other friends. You
Mm-hmm.
know, just I see them opening up a lot more than what they used to,
Okay.
which I greatly appreciate because it gives me a little heads up, and it lets me know, okay, hey, that one's having a bad day. We're gonna let go of the snappiness just a little bit. Tomorrow is a new day. We'll start again,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
fresh start.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but knowing helps me.
Right. Yeah. 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 It's interesting because I don't even think the students I teach, although they're 16 plus, I don't even think they're so much aware. And if they are, they don't discuss it. You know, I have a lot of students who I'm able to identify they're suffering from social anxiety or from anxiety, but they're not openly talking about it.
Okay.
I would bring it up and say, okay, I know that some of you are still suffering from the anxiety of COVID, etc. But they don't bring it up openly, which is quite sad because it,
Yeah.
it means I'm got anything to work with. I'm just guessing from my experiences.
I mean, that first year post COVID, when they were all kind of withdrawn, that was probably the roughest year for me, like
Mhm,
2020, 2021. Because I mean, I just didn't know. I couldn't pull it out of them. I knew in a lot of their cases, there was something going on,
mhm,
whether it was anxiety or, stress or depression. There was just a lot of factors that were happening. And there was a lot of fear. They might come in and they would say, oh, yeah, my grandma has COVID. But like, they didn't tell me how they felt about it.
right.
Like, whereas
Mhm,
progressively, I've seen now that we're 4 years post, like, my kids are much more willing to come and talk to me and
mhm,
say, okay, this is what's going on with me. Can I chill today? Can I relax? Can you not call on me? Can I skip reading today? Can I, you know, and it's not every single day that they're coming in and making that
yeah, yeah, yeah,
request. But I mean, if they do come in and they're honest with me,
yeah,
I'm more than happy to honor the request.
yeah, 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 yeah. Thank you. And in terms of now that they're all back fully, etc., what have you seen in terms of their behavior? Because earlier when you say when they came back in class, you start having a community. Do you still have a community of the new students that come in, or do you have to prep them or support them to engage and have that community, or is it happening automatically?
I feel like I'm I'm lucky enough that I teach upperclassmen
Mhm.
now, and they naturally will build a community.
Right.
And I just sit back and watch the personalities. One thing that I always do at the very beginning of the year is I will tape pictures to my tables, and then I have the same pictures on cards. And when the kid walks in, he has to draw a picture, and that's the table he has to sit at. So for like the first 2 weeks, they're sitting randomly. And then I will move on to setting up the groups and doing all of the stuff that we do, because we do a lot of small group work.
Okay. Okay.
Um, and I try to mix personalities and make sure that, there's someone in each group that's really got leadership skills, that's really got, but like those 2 weeks that I have where they're randomized really gives me an opportunity to see. But I mean, it also makes these kids not sit next to their best friend.
Yes. Yes.
Like,
Yes.
they've got to go sit by wherever their picture's from.
Yeah.
And so it might not be the person that they would have sat by.
Right.
Um, but I feel like it develops. And then another thing that I've always done um, is I do daily journals, and they're short little journals. Um, and one of the things that I will always do is I will give them whatever my answer is to the journal prompt. So maybe the question is, you have any superpower in the entire world, what is it, and do you use it for good or evil? Like, and then I'll tell them what my superpower would be and whether I would use it for good or evil. And then I open the floor up to let them do it.
Wow.
And some days I got nobody. Some days I got 10 kids who want to tell me everything that they've ever thought about being a superhero.
Right.
I mean, and so it's very just all over the place. Sometimes it takes, 4 minutes. Sometimes it's taken 15.
Mm,
But I just love that they're willing to share it with me.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I think that that has increased since COVID,
Okay.
is their willingness to actually share with me. But I think I also have become a lot more open with them as well in
Mhm.
sharing things. They know I have a son. They know that I have certain health issues. They know that I've been a teacher forever. They know that these things about my life. Like, I like Taylor Swift a lot. I decorated my classroom with Taylor Swift stuff. Like, they know little bits and pieces about me, and those journals give them ideas every single day too about, you know, what was your favorite place you've ever been? What makes you feel at peace? If you won $800 today, what's the one thing you would buy? And it has to be in the next 24 hours.
Mhm.
Like, it gives them an insight into me, and their answers give me an insight into them.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Thank you. I think the journal idea is fantastic. Is it part of your lessons or it's just something else? It's just for the
It's like a bell
well-being.
ringer that I made up. Like, I, looked up journal prompts online. I thought of some journal prompts. I had like journal books that I had kept from different years that I had filled out. And if I saw a prompt that I thought was really good, I had a post-it note on it. And so they're kind of drawn from all over the place. Um,
Right.
and I put them all together into like batches of 5, and they do one each day as a bell ringer. And part of it is I just want them to write. I write something. This is what I want you to do. I want you to write.
Mhm.
Every single day, I want you to write something.
Mhm.
Like, I'm not expecting a 5-paragraph essay every day, but I am expecting you to write at least a sentence for me
Yeah,
to
yeah,
answer this question.
yeah, yeah. I think that's a very good idea because it enables them to write. You also enable them to think, and I
I
think
mean, and
that
have
is
their own
powerful.
opinion.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that is so powerful because these students cannot think. We teach them, but one of the things we have not taught them is how to think independently, you know. And yes, I like the idea of the journal, you know. So in terms of now that we up to scratch now, in terms of your mental health and in terms of their mental health, what are the issues with that?
Um, I think that I think things are getting better for the kids.
Right.
I think that here stateside, we've really, really had a big push for social emotional learning.
Okay.
And my kids roll their eyes every time that they hear that we have to do social emotional learning. But I think that it's helped. I think that once we started it, my kids were a lot more open with me. They were a lot
Yeah.
more honest with me
Yeah.
and told me what was going on. And I think it built a level of trust
Right.
that maybe they don't see, right? But it's important. It's
Yeah.
very important.
Yeah.
And I think that that all goes back into that classroom community and, being able to trust each other, being able to trust our teacher, trust everything. Mental health wise, for me, um, I did not escape COVID. I ended up getting pulmonary embolisms from COVID, and I lost use of one of my lungs. And so I have had to figure out how to teach.
Yeah.
I don't have as much air. I have to be able to project. I've got to be able to make it through an entire day doing, stuff like that. And so for a year, I had to really figure out what works and what doesn't work. I had a microphone at one point so that I wouldn't have to be as loud. So I wasn't using as much air. I have tried different things to figure out different things, but I'm also very honest with my students, like very upfront. And I'll tell them, hey, if I give you this signal, it just means that I have to take a breather. Just chill. I'm going to walk to the back. I'm going to take a breather, and then I'm going to come back and we're going to start again.
Mm.
Like, I only have so much physical ability to do this anymore. Like
Mm.
mentally, oh, I got you.
Yeah.
Like, but
Yeah.
physically, I struggled. And I feel like that year after when I lost my lung, like it was very hard for me trying to figure out how am I going to cope? How am I going to cope? How am I going to cope? And try to do my job.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
the grading, the lesson planning, all
Mm.
of those things,
Mm.
and dealing with health issues at the same
Yeah.
time
Yes,
just definitely
correct.
impacted me in a
Yeah.
different way.
Yeah.
Um, than probably someone who didn't get COVID and didn't have the health issues.
Mm.
You know, they didn't have that extra layer where they had to start worrying about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's been hard, but I feel like I finally kind of got my groove this last year, of like, you know, this is how long I can lecture. This is what I'm capable of. This is when I need to take a break. You know, this is how we're going to have to run class. This is how I'm going to have to section it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it just helps to feel like I have a plan.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And it also means that you are not giving out of yourself without pouring back in.
Hmm.
Because as you know, as teachers, we tend to give so much of ourselves and we don't pour back in.
Wow, that was one of my mother's struggles after I had got this health issue. She was just like, "You can't do this anymore," and I
Mm-hmm.
was just like, "I have to do this. Like, this is all I wanted to do my entire life. I was 8 years old and I decided I wanted to be a teacher. Like, I can't imagine doing something else. Like, I would much rather figure out how to do this than try something else."
Yeah.
Like, this is my love. This is my passion. This is what I love.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so let me figure it out. But I mean, she was just like, you're giving too much. You're giving too much. You're going to
Burn out.
crash.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I had to find that balance
Yeah.
of how can I make this work?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It is so it is so true though, because as teachers, I think that's what happened. It's like I had a colleague who been off Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and he came back on Thursday. And I said to him, "What are you doing here?" He's bunged up. He could hardly talk. And I'm saying to him, "Why?" He said, "Because I've got so much work to do. The students are doing exams. And if I'm not in, it means that, anybody take over, they would not be doing the part I want them to do." And I
Mm-hmm.
paused and I looked at him and I said to him, "You know what? That is so true. We pour so much into our student and we don't pour back into ourselves that we become burnout and
Mm-hmm.
there's no support for us."
No,
You know?
no. I mean, and I definitely agree with that. I'm glad that we've gotten away from the telling teachers about self care. Take care of yourself. You know, have a cup of tea and take a nap. And it's just like, when am I supposed to do these things? Like, I don't understand. Like, I
Exactly.
have stuff I need to do.
Yeah. And you see, what is so interesting is, let's say it was about self-love and self-care, but yesterday they keep on piling up. They're not saying let's take some things away, right? They're saying,
Hmm.
yes, the deadline for the grade is in 2 weeks' time, and that is it. So,
Oh, yeah.
and the pile you have to mark, they're not saying, okay, let's give you a break in terms of when the deadline is going to be. They pile it on and still say, oh, yes, you must take care of yourself. How and when?
That was always my question. Like, when am I taking this nap? Like, I gotta
Exactly.
work.
Exactly. Because you still have, saying that, okay, you need to give them all feedback. And when you start giving whole class feedback, but have you thought of little Johnny who might need your feedback individually? But you did say we could do whole class feedback.
Hmm.
So it's really challenging in terms of we are meant to be scaling down to have time for us, but we're not able to scale down even though we are told that. But that's verbalizing it and not actioning it. It's
Now,
just,
there's a big movement in the United States for teachers to only work their contract hours. And like, if it doesn't get done during contract hours, it doesn't get done. And like, I can't do it. I'm just like, but my kids need feedback. They need me to do this. Like, I need to do this for them.
yeah,
And like, I have scaled back a lot. I took my school email off my phone. So I mean, like, I don't look at it once I leave the building. Like, it's just not something I do anymore. I set like specific days that I grade. This is the day I grade. Even if you turned it in late on Wednesday, it's not going to get graded until this day. This is my grading day. This is the
yeah,
day that I do this. So that I have those other days to spend with my son,
yeah,
to make dinner, to get him to practices, to do the things that I need to do as a mom,
yeah, yeah,
and not just as a teacher. Like,
yeah,
I've got to make time for him.
yeah, yeah. It is, it is so true because once you have a family and then teaching, it becomes so tiring. It's like this week, every evening I come home, I'm exhausted. And I'm saying to myself, but why are you so exhausted? And I have to remind myself, because you're a teacher and you're doing a million and one things. And the million and one, and you're still not completing all of them. It's just really, it's a fantastic job, but I'm constantly being reminded it's a vocation.
Mhm. Um, you just reminded me of something that I posted about last week. Um, so we're on summer break. I'm on summer break.
Oh, are
Um,
you? Okay.
so for me, I struggle with the transition. Like, I struggle with, going from having 400 questions asked of me a day and, interaction to the, I don't see them. And I don't have that many questions asked of me every day. Like, I struggle with that transition. I'm so used to it because I spend so many months in that way.
Yeah,
And so it's really hard to like get out of
yeah,
that
yeah,
position where you are like craving that interaction because you're so used to having it.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so, like, trying to get yourself to relax,
yeah,
trying to get yourself to not just be constantly ready to go.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, it's hard. It's just a hard transition for me.
yeah, yeah. Thank you. You say you post something online. What did you post?
I posted a TikTok where I asked if other teachers felt that way too. Like, do they feel that way when they suddenly get into summer? I interact with 150 kids every single day, and now I interact with one.
Yeah,
Like, and it's a very, very different
yeah,
interaction.
yeah, yeah,
I was
yeah,
like, do any of you guys feel that way? Because I feel that way.
yeah,
And like, I got a lot of comments that were like, yes, I feel that way. Like, I feel like I have to put myself on a schedule.
yeah,
Like, because then I feel like I'm still productive if I put myself on a schedule. Like, but if I don't, I'll just nap all day long.
yeah,
I won't eat. I'll forget that I was supposed to eat.
yeah,
I'll watch 6 episodes of something and then the day's gone and I don't know what's
yeah,
happened.
yeah. Or you can't see how you spend the day, isn't it?
Right.
I think because we're so used to always high adrenaline. That's the thing about it.
Oh yeah. You're just
It's like,
constant. You expect it. You know that when they walk in, someone's going to ask you a question. You know when they walk
exactly.
in that there's going to be noise going on around you.
Yeah.
And you're just so used to that. I was thinking earlier, I'm actually out of town for a concert tonight. And so like I don't have my son. I'm in a hotel room by myself. And I was like, I haven't been this silent. Like I don't know how to do this, like, to not have, you know, voices
Yeah.
that are just constantly going.
Yeah.
I mean, and, like, I don't see it as a bad thing to have, like, interactions and they're talking to their peers and they're talking to me and we're all doing our thing, but, like, it's just never silent. Like, even when
Yeah.
it's supposed to be silent, it's never actually silent.
It is so true, is this? Because we constantly on the go, that when it's time to unwind, you don't even know how to do it. Because it's
Mhm.
like, I think I did a live and I was talking about things people take for granted, like to go to the bathroom. For some people is normal. As a
Mhm.
teacher, you know, because I was doing the younger years, I think it was either Wednesday or Thursday, and I realized I run to the photocopy machine and then I had to run to my class because I'm going to pick them out outside. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I need to go toilet. When do I do that?
I know.
You know? And I suddenly realized, my goodness, people take these things for granted. But for
Oh,
us
yeah.
teacher, it's not. For us teacher, especially when you're teaching the younger children, it's a schedule. You have to think, someone have to watch my class. If I miss that break time, because I'm at the photocopying machine, where and then from the photocopying machine, you go to pick up your class. If you miss that, you are stuck. And it really dawned on me in terms of the things we take for granted.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, definitely. I mean, I just I can see both sides of it, you know. I need to be there. I need to supervise those kids. But it's just
yeah.
like, man, I really wish I could go to the bathroom whenever I wanted to.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's like I just said to my colleague, can you just watch them, please? I need to
Mhm.
go. And she looked at me laughing, right? And I thinking, blood, it's like this is a natural thing people just take for granted. But for you,
Oh,
you
yeah.
have to organize it.
Oh, yeah, you gotta ask someone, you know, you check the chart to see who's on plan so that you can, like, text them real quick and they can come watch your class and you go and they come
Yeah.
back and
And even when you go, your mind is acting and thinking, okay, when I go back, I have to do X, Y, Z because I didn't start doing this. And it's like your mind is constantly on the go.
mhm.
It's just so, it's a it's a fantastic job, but it's definitely a vocation. Definitely a vocation. Which there's sometimes in order to silence the noise, we have to be intentional, or else it doesn't get silenced.
Mhm.
You know, thank you for that. The final question. What three tips would you give an educator, someone who decided coming into education, right? But at the same time, you also need to make them aware of how to support the mental well-being.
Share. Share. Right? If you look around my classroom, I have pictures of my son, of my family, me hanging out with other teachers in the building. Those are always their favorites because they're just like, wait, you know him? She's not even an English teacher. Or you know her? She's the PE teacher. Why are you guys hanging out? Like they seem to think that we're just in these exclusive bubbles.
Yeah,
And so once they start seeing these connections and all these different things, and you know, they see my son, and for some of them, they'll get me for 3 years in a row. And like they'll be like, oh my gosh, he's gotten so big. Like, because they've just seen him progressively get bigger.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I feel like that, like having your life and your personality, like they don't need to know everything. They don't know who I'm dating. They don't know like things like that. But I
yeah,
mean, do they know, okay, this is my friend group. This is my son. This is my family. You know, if they point to a picture and ask who someone is, I'll tell them, you know, and things like that. They
yeah,
know things about me. They know that I favorite place I've ever been has been Cuba. I absolutely adore that island. You know, they know I love Taylor Swift, but I think that making yourself human
yeah,
is the biggest thing about relationship building. You know, being the first to admit that, oh, I made a mistake. or
Yeah.
I I've tripped in my classroom before and fallen on the floor and laughed at myself.
Yeah.
I mean, in that willingness to laugh at yourself
Yes.
is, I think, a huge thing. And I think that showing your personality is a big part of just going into the classroom. Um, I don't believe in like, don't smile until after Christmas. Like,
Oh, well, I would have.
smile.
Sorry, I would have. I don't fit that bill. I would have been sacked already.
I mean, be genuine. Be like, if if they give you attitude, you can scowl. If they do something funny, smile.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't hide behind like a stony mask
Yeah.
just because you want them to respect you or you want them to think of you as the authority. Like, I don't feel like that ever works for anybody.
That's
But I
true.
hear teachers tell me that they've gotten that advice. And I'm
Oh,
just like,
really? Okay.
that's a bad idea. Don't do that.
Exactly. Exactly.
Like, you need to be genuine and you need to express emotion,
Yeah.
right? And you need to show them who you are.
Yeah.
And
Disagree to
then the
you.
last thing that I would say for a new teacher, which I mentor new teachers, um,
Okay.
is less digital. Like, I
Hmm.
know that we have been pushed and pushed and pushed to do digital, especially as we're moving one to one. But one thing that I've realized is that I started keeping track of it, and more kids turn in paper assignments. More of the assignment is done or completed when they turn in a paper assignment
Right.
than when they're doing digital. I'm
Right.
sure every teacher's experienced that they turned it in, but they turned it in blank on a digital
Yes.
side. I
Yes.
don't get blank paper worksheets.
Exactly. Yes.
Like, they just will not hand me a blank paper worksheet. It will have
Yeah.
something on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like,
Yeah.
I just get more back from the paper. So,
Yeah.
I mean, show
Yeah.
yourself, be genuine, move away from that digital piece. Not saying you can never be digital, you can.
Yeah.
There's tons of activities that I've done that are digital, but sometimes paper is just the better tool.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you there because I do a lot of things on paper. So, even what Sheila said to me last week, Miss, how do you want me to hand in the essay? Do you want me to do it digitally or write it? I said, please write. I said, because I connect with that better than, doing it digital because there'll be some reasons why it's not there. At least if you give me paper, I could actually give my comment on it. And it's much faster for me to have a look at it than doing it electronically.
Mm-hmm.
So that's for me, that's really is working. You've actually did say something to me at the beginning that you've actually did a survey and find out that most students like paper-based.
Yes.
Yeah,
I do the end of the year survey, and one of my questions that I asked was, do you like digital assignments? Do you like a mix? Do you like paper? Um, the kids really, if it has to do with literature, they want the paper.
right.
Like, they want to be able to underline, they want to be able to highlight, they want to be able to
Right.
circle, they want the physical.
Yes.
There are other things that they want the digital. When
Yeah.
they're writing their journals, when they're typing a final draft for an essay, like, they want a digital.
Yeah.
But I mean, just especially the literature part,
Yeah.
you know, and grammar, obviously, doing it on paper is a better idea because then the computer doesn't automatically correct it for them.
Yeah.
And so, like, I obviously have always done grammar paper wise because I feel like that's a stronger way to build the skill.
Okay, okay, okay. Thank you for that. Is there anything else you want to share with us before we say goodbye?
No, but thank you for this opportunity. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you for accepting the offer. It was fantastic. Oh my goodness, this was fantastic. And if you know any other teachers that would like to come and share from your school, that want to share some of the journey that they've had, it would be quite nice because it is so nice to share that we know that we're not alone and we all going through this struggle of how we teach the students. What do
Mm-hmm.
we do? How do we get to them? That sometimes we're not connecting with them. As I said to my student last week, sometimes I cannot connect with you. If your peer connect with you better, that's fine. you know if when I say something you don't understand, but you understand when your peer discuss it, that's okay for me. My thing is, as long as you understand it, I don't care by what method, as long as you understand the teaching. So there's sometimes when we actually come to this platform and we discuss, we get ideas of what we could use, etc. And something I'm taking away, yes, I'm telling you now, I'm taking it, the journal idea, I love it.
Yes.
When I go in next week, I'm going to say to my students, I'd said to them before, I want them to keep a journal, but I need to remind them. And I'm going to say, I'm going to give you guys journal prompt every day. So therefore, this is what I want you guys to do. And you're going to see how much it's going to help you in terms of your mental health well-being, because
Yes.
and in terms of direction as well. So I am going to take that and I'm going to talk to my students about it next week because I think it's a fantastic idea. Thank you for that.
Mm, thank you.
Thank you very much. And as I said, send other teachers to me, so that we could have more discussion. Discussion like this is so very important because it helps us in terms of dealing with the students we have every day.
Yes, it
Because when
does.
they come to us with a backpack, and in the backpack there's a whole other thing before we start teaching them. Whole other stuff. As you said earlier on, had an argument with the mother, the grandmother to come to stay, and the room is place is crowded. The little sister is messing up. The mental health, the backpack
Mhm.
is full. And
Yep.
before we start teaching them, we have to start unpacking this backpack
Hmm.
before we start giving them the academic, because we can't when so many things is in that backpack, right?
It's very true.
you know so thank you very much. Enjoy your concert this evening. You say you're going to your concert, have fun. Take your teacher hat off and have
Yes.
your fun hat on. Right? Enjoy it. And how long
Thank
you
you.
on holidays for?
We go back the very beginning of August. I think it's August 4th.
Okay, 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 okay. We break up on the, I think it's the 19th or the 21st, and we go back um or we go back September the 7th or something like this.
Yeah.
So you guys are ahead of us. Anyway, enjoy. Thank you very much for coming and sharing your journey. It was wonderful. I really enjoyed. Thank you very much. And I've taken ideas which I'm going to be giving away next week to my students. So you see, that's one of the beauty of actually having those discussions, right? So
Yes.
very, very important. Help us to share. Bye, Facebook audience. Thank you very much. And I'll see you guys next Friday when we'll be speaking about home education. Yes, I'm a traditional educator, but home education, we know it supports your child in terms of where they are than where the education system feel they should be. So come to join and listen to some of the homeschooler talking about the power of homeschooling. So I see